In a move that shocked the world, King Charles has signed a royal warrant that rewrites history in a single stroke, abruptly ending Queen Camilla's official reign. The decision came suddenly, without warning, advanced briefings, or carefully managed leaks, just a confirmed act that palace insiders describe as a moment when time seemed to pause, leaving even seasoned aides struggling to comprehend what had happened. One moment, Camilla stood at the center of royal power. The next, her titles were erased by the very institution that once elevated her. What makes the move even more striking is how solitary it appears. According to multiple sources close to the inner circle, King Charles bypassed his usual advisory council, summoned no senior courtiers for debate, and allowed no last-minute compromises. This was not a consensus decision, but a deeply personal, deliberate, and final act. Buckingham Palace the night before the warrant was signed was unusually still. Lights burned late in private quarters. Corridors echoed with restrained footsteps, and staff sensed a tension they dared not question. Those closest to Charles noticed his withdrawn demeanor, his refusal of supper, and his insistence on privacy. This was not indecision but preparation, the culmination of months of simmering tensions between Charles and Camilla, hidden behind public smiles and ceremonial appearances. Tensions between King Charles and Queen Camilla reportedly grew sharper, more emotional, and increasingly difficult to contain. As carefully chosen words gave way to blunt truths and trust began to fracture, a dangerous shift inside a monarchy where betrayal carries swift, merciless consequences. The royal warrant that Charles signed was said to be uncompromising in its scope. Every remaining title, formal privilege, and symbolic marker of status was revoked immediately, leaving palace staff stunned by the cold, precise, and irreversible language. Shock rippled through the corridors. Conversations stopped mid-sentence, phones were lowered slowly, and whispers of fear spread among those who wondered if anyone in the monarchy was truly safe. No announcements had been prepared, no reassuring statements rehearsed. The institution built on control had been blindsided by its own king. But Charles had not acted on impulse, he had acted on certainty, and the warrant was merely the tip of the iceberg. Weeks of sleepless nights led him to the royal archives, where he discovered a long-sealed, restricted file containing H.M. Elizabeth's private correspondence. Inside were letters and memos that hinted at manipulation, financial schemes, and subtle undermining tied to Camilla, with warnings that trust at the heart of the household was being slowly dismantled. One letter, handwritten and sealed separately, bore a chilling warning. If Camilla were ever crowned beside Charles, she would not preserve the monarchy, she would hollow it. The discovery shattered him, confirming fears he could no longer ignore, and casting the warrant not as a moment of caprice, but as the culmination of months of hidden truths and unavoidable reckoning, doubt and despair. The love Charles had once fought the world to preserve now cast a long, cold shadow over his mother's final legacy. As the ink dried on the damning warrant, Camilla's carefully crafted and fiercely guarded world began to unravel in real time. Moments after receiving the news, she reportedly collapsed in her private chambers. No tiara, no entourage, just a woman blindsided by the man who once vowed to protect her. This was not merely a demotion, it was profoundly personal. Witnesses later described her cries echoing through thick palace doors, unanswered, a raw testament to shock and betrayal. As aides scrambled to return to their duties, an emergency call rang through the palace's private network, plunging Camilla's wing into a tense, panicked stillness. Doors slammed, senior aides rushed in silently, and a medical team was summoned under the guise of a routine wellness check, though everyone knew the truth. Camilla had gone into emotional shock, her pale face and shallow breathing evidence of the impact, not illness. One long-serving attendant later revealed, under strict anonymity, that she screamed over and over, "He promised me forever," her voice cracking with a pain that obliterated every illusion of control she had maintained for decades. Palace protocol kicked in immediately. Phones were confiscated, leaks forbidden, whispers of total containment filled the corridors, all aimed at shielding both the Queen Consort and the monarchy from implosion. When Camilla finally regained consciousness hours later, her first words were not about titles or about Charles, they were precise, chilling, and pointed. "Where is William?" A question loaded with suspicion, perhaps even blame, suggesting she believed the prince may have played a role in her downfall. Sources close to her inner circle insist that her collapse reflected not just the royal order itself, but the destruction of a carefully constructed reality she had spent decades building. For years, Camilla had fought public scrutiny, won over key allies, and solidified her image beside the king, making the sudden loss of everything by a stroke of Charles's pen feel like betrayal wrapped in royal parchment. There were no formal statements, no carefully drafted denials, only silence and whispers of lawyers being called. Within the palace, one truth became undeniable. The woman who once reshaped the throne's narrative was now desperately trying to hold on to her own, and deep down, she must have known the threat had not come from outside enemies, but from within. Charles, however, was not alone in his decision. Princess Anne, stoic and unwavering, loyal to their mother's legacy, reportedly issued a blunt ultimatum. Either Camilla goes, or Anne would resign from all her titles, duties, and patronages, walking away from everything she had built. And had discovered the hidden correspondence days before Charles while preparing for an archival exhibition honoring their late mother. Reading the sealed letters, instinct drove her, and the revelations shattered her composure. In a private confrontation with Charles, her voice, usually measured, carried grief laced with fury. Invoking their mother not as authority, but as a moral compass, she accused Charles of allowing deception to fester and expressed her contempt for Camilla, long simmering beneath the surface. The ultimatum left no room for negotiation. Anne's readiness to sacrifice her legacy pierced through Charles's emotional fog, shifting him from defensiveness to stunned realization. She left him with the documents and her silence, her words lingering as a moral imperative he could not ignore. While Anne served as the conscience of the monarchy, it was Prince William, Charles's firstborn and future king, who delivered the emotional trigger for the final decision. In a private, candid conversation, William pleaded with his father to protect the institution, stressing that his concern was not anger, but the future of the crown and his own children. Looking his father in the eye, William asked a question that left no escape. What happens to the crown if we pretend nothing is wrong? That moment crystallized the path Charles would take, combining moral weight, familial loyalty, and the unflinching reality of duty to decide Camilla's fate. William had reportedly requested the audience in the wake of Anne's confrontation, sensing a shift in his father's resolve. But he did not come to lecture. He came carrying years of restrained emotion and the weight of watching a monarchy slowly mutate into something unrecognizable. Camilla's growing influence, both publicly and privately, had long troubled him, and now, with incriminating documents revealed and public trust waning, silence could no longer serve as his shield. He opened not with anger, but with memory, recalling the image of his mother, Diana, and the solemn truth that her legacy had been sidelined in favor of a narrative that never fit. "Mom wouldn't have wanted this," he reportedly said, the words landing with such gravity that they silenced Charles. "She deserved better, and so does the monarchy." William went beyond emotion, speaking of the crown's credibility, the whispers beyond palace gates, and Camilla's presence inviting scrutiny at a time when clarity was essential. He pointed to polls, headlines, and public discontent that no PR campaign could erase. "The public will forgive many things," he reportedly told Charles, "but they won't forgive betrayal disguised as loyalty." Charles did not argue. Not this time. Insiders say he listened quietly, caught between pain and paralysis, the same man who once defied public outcry to stand by Camilla now motionless, confronted not by advisors or headlines, but by his son, who in that moment spoke for the future of the monarchy. After a long, heavy silence, Charles reportedly looked down, clasped his hands, and whispered, "You're right." No argument, no conditions, just a surrender to a truth he could no longer outrun. Meanwhile, Camilla, cornered and stripped of her power, was already preparing her next move. Far from retreating, she reportedly retaliated, orchestrating a plan that could expose secrets the palace never intended to surface. Within hours of being stripped of her titles, she is said to have instructed a trusted aide to retrieve a locked safe hidden deep within her private quarters, an item few knew existed. Inside, according to sources, are decades of letters handwritten and typed chronicling private correspondence with senior royals and exchanges with Diana herself, raw and unfiltered, including Diana's final words about Camilla. The safe allegedly also contains private audio recordings of Charles, in which he reportedly speaks of mental exhaustion, public battles, and most damningly, regret over the past, a trove of material that could destabilize the monarchy if revealed. The tapes reportedly captured Charles's private regrets over choices, over marrying for love instead of duty, and if they ever surfaced, they could forever alter public perception of the king. Behind the scenes, Camilla moved quickly, summoning her legal team and most trusted media advisors. According to insiders, the tone in those rooms was warlike. She had no intention of going quietly, and was prepared to burn the entire royal facade if necessary. Draft statements were allegedly prepared, legal loopholes explored, and foreign press options weighed. She had leverage, and these letters gave her all she needed. Meanwhile, Buckingham Palace's PR machine braced for impact. Senior advisors were tasked with drafting counter-narratives, revisiting old grievances, and reconsidering allegations once buried, knowing that a leak from Camilla could trigger a total breakdown of the unspoken agreements that had always shielded the monarchy from itself. The stakes escalated further with rumors of a document buried deep in Camilla's safe, said to contain material capable of devastating Prince William's public image. Its existence alone had already created cracks in the palace's once impenetrable walls, making the question not whether it would be revealed, but when and at what cost. As the story turned public, the monarchy faced its greatest threat, not simply Camilla's revenge, but the ripple effect of what the royal warrant truly signified. Social media erupted, headlines screamed betrayal, and public opinion spiraled into chaos. Was Charles reclaiming control or exacting revenge? Hashtags trended, networks debated live, and every inch of royal history was dragged under the microscope. What had begun as a private reckoning inside Buckingham Palace had detonated into an international spectacle, exposing the monarchy as fractured, fragile, and struggling to maintain relevance in a world that demanded transparency and answers. Within minutes of the official statement confirming Camilla's titles had been revoked, global news networks seized the story like blood and water, running rolling coverage while pundits dissected the unprecedented drama. Public reaction to Camilla's downfall was anything but unified. For many, it was justice long overdue and deeply satisfying. Social media lit up with praise for the king, framing his actions as putting legacy above loyalty, with hashtags and trending phrases like Queen Diana from the grave and Elizabeth's revenge. Yet not all voices were forgiving. Critics called the move cruel, with some labeling it character assassination, and former aides once loyal to Camilla began breaking their silence, some expressing sympathy, others describing a woman who had overreached and underestimated the enduring power of royal bloodlines. As the uproar grew, Scotland Yard was reportedly briefed on possible protests, with rumours of both pro-Camilla and anti-monarchy demonstrations circulating, prompting quiet but heightened security at Buckingham Palace. Inside Parliament, whispers of reform intensified. Republicans seized the moment to question royal privileges and spending, proposing independent oversight, while MPs debated the monarchy's stability. Meanwhile, the royal PR machine raced to control the narrative, holding emergency meetings, summoning crisis consultants, and debating whether to frame the action as courageous leadership, a painful personal decision, or simply remain silent and let public sympathy grow. Every choice seemed fraught, each step capable of igniting a different fire. The most pressing question loomed. If this could happen to Camilla, what did it reveal about the monarchy itself? Its image of unity, its claims of dignity, and even its very purpose now seemed exposed, vulnerable. Amid the chaos, an unexpected voice emerged. Princess Catherine, silent publicly for months, spoke with quiet authority. Her statement, released through official palace channels, was short but deliberate, measured, sorrowful, and piercing in its clarity. She emphasized that some truths, no matter how painful, must be faced, a subtle yet unmistakable reference to the long-standing friction with Camilla. The timing was precise, just days after the warrant, and as public debate reached a fever pitch, and the impact was immediate. Observers dissected each word, recognizing that Catherine's intervention was both a moral reminder and a calculated assertion of perspective personal, yet undeniably tied to the future and credibility of the monarchy. It saw the tension between Catherine and Camilla, long rumoured but never confirmed, was now undeniable. Until this moment, Catherine had remained silent, letting her restraint speak for itself. When she finally broke that silence, the emotional weight of her words landed like a thunderclap. For the public, she had long embodied composure, duty, and quiet resilience, so her decision to speak after months of absence made it clear that something inside her had shifted. This was not about reclaiming the spotlight, but about finally releasing the truth she had carried in silence. The reaction was immediate and overwhelmingly supportive. Social media erupted with praise for her bravery, timing, and refusal to indulge in spectacle, while news outlets called her statement dignified, searing, and the most powerful moment since the warrant. In just a few measured lines, Catherine had shifted the emotional center of the scandal. Analysts and body language experts noted the subtle quiver in her voice, the firmness of her posture, and the sorrow in her eyes grief not for Camilla, but for the monarchy itself, for her children, and for all she had remained silent about for too long. Behind the scenes, whispers suggested that Catherine had played a more decisive role in recent weeks than anyone realized, her quiet strength tipping the scale where Anne's fury had drawn the line. Meanwhile, the storm was far from over. With Camilla stripped of power and trust fractured within palace walls, Britain stood at a crossroads. Would this bold move revive faith in the monarchy or accelerate its decline? Since the Warrant, King Charles has almost disappeared from public life, cancelling appearances and retreating behind palace gates in quiet reflection, avoiding even his closest advisors. In contrast, Prince William has begun to step into roles once reserved for the sovereign's ceremonial duties, diplomatic meetings, and public appearances, all carried out with growing confidence. The message is unmistakable. The transition is quietly underway, whether temporary or a test of readiness. Camilla's absence, however, speaks louder than any headline. Reports suggest she has withdrawn from the public stage entirely, perhaps seeking refuge abroad, wounded yet watchful, a presence felt even in silence. Amid this reshaping, whispers grow of a soft transfer of power, of Charles considering permanent abdication, or at least a reduction in duties, moves that would accelerate William's rise and redefine the monarchy for a new era, while reminding the world that the crown, though fragile, continues to pivot amid crisis. The monarchy, both internally and abroad, has always survived by projecting strength, even when fractured from within. Yet questions no one dares ask publicly are beginning to rise. Was the Warrant only the beginning? Some insiders suggest a second document exists in draft form, more personal, more destructive, capable of changing titles, altering succession, or even erasing someone entirely from the royal future. Its contents remain sealed, and for now, the royal family stands in the eye of the storm, held together by a fragile thread of silence, strategy, and legacy. What comes next is not merely a decision, it is a reckoning. When history looks back on this moment, it will not ask what was lost, it will ask what was worth saving. This royal firestorm is far from over, and what unfolds next may define the crown for generations.